Welcome to the Data Democracy, presented by renowned O'Reilly author Ole Olesen-Bagneux, empowered by Xenia. Make your data accessible and discoverable by anyone, anywhere, at any time.
Hi everybody, you're listening to the Data Democracy, and I am your host, Ole Olesen-Bagneux, Chief Evangelist in Xenia and the author of the Enterprise Data Catalog published by O'Reilly. In this podcast, we explore what an enterprise data democracy is with knowledgeable guests. Today's guest is John Thomas. I met John at the Data Innovation Summit in 2023. We had a good, long talk on everything about data management, data mesh, data contracts, data products. John was a surprising meeting, one of those discreet persons that just kept displaying deep levels of knowledge in many different directions. So, here are my takeaways from my conversation with John. First, a data leader takeaway. If you are a data leader in Scandinavia, I suggest you push harder on cutting-edge initiatives. John pointed out that in Scandinavia, we play safe, but to stay competitive, we need to be more bold. Okay, a data democracy takeaway. Data contracts can be automated. John pointed out that the novelty is not the idea of a data contract as a document. It's the perspective of automation that is new, and it is a game changer, also in terms of transporting data from the operational plane to the data plane. And third, a personal takeaway. Remember to listen to discreet data persons. They have a lot to say. Okay, enough of me ranting. Let's hear what John has to say. Hi, John.
Hi, Ole.
I'm happy to have you on, John. For the listeners, will you explain a little bit about your professional background, your career path, and so on?
Yeah, myself, John. I have my educational background in Bachelor's of Engineering in Electronics. And after that, I started as a software engineer. And after that, I get into the data space. It's been about 15 years I'm working in the data space, have seen different changes or transitions in the data space. Got a chance to work with different data problems in different areas like data warehousing, data lake house, in different parts of the world like UK, Australia, Netherlands, with different top-notch companies having large set of data. Yeah, also working with different types of data loadings and data engineering like batch processing, real time, on-premise, cloud. Then when it comes to the modern data architectures like data fabrics and data mesh, contracts, and of course the data democracy that we are trying to be most influencer. Yeah.
So, John, that sounds like you've been quite around in the world of data, touching a lot of technologies and also working in many different countries, right, for many different companies. I talk with people all over the world, like you most likely also do. And to what extent do you think the conversation is the same across the world in the world of like data?
Yeah, the conversations are quite the same. I would say that it's just that few places the pace is a bit less, and other places are like, for example, the Scandinavian countries just wait and see that how technology get matured and adopt to it. But whereas in some countries it's like they really get in the train very early. That's all much difference I see. But the problems and underlying issues we are trying to solve is same all over. One simple example is data quality. We have been speaking about this for era, but still we are not reached a maturity there. We can find good quality data yet.
Yeah, it's quite surprising, and to the extent we are really talking about the same things, right, across the globe. That's at least my experience, and I do agree also about the fact that the Scandinavian countries are not unfortunately not the first movers in many of the data issues and trends that flourish out there. Okay, so moving a little bit into what you have done more specifically, I know that you have been a very rare voice in the data contract space, and that you have provided a lot of input to exactly this field. Can you share with me and the listeners what it is you have done in that regard?
So last 1.5 to 2 years, my focus was mostly on data mesh and contracts and how it can live together. So I know that contracts is basically like a simple agreement between two parties. Could be a producer from an operational plane and a consumer in an analytical plane. But it's just a contract. It's just dumb contract. It doesn't have any brain as it is. But we can build some brains on top of it and make it really a powerful tool. And what I would like to advocate is more like a contract-driven architecture, meaning like we can trigger a lot of automations from these contracts. One simple example: if you just take a simple contract, it just says like what should be a schema of a table, how it should like, what should be the data types, and what the name of the table and where it should live. These kind of information is there in a bare minimum contracts. But this is good enough to do a lot of automation. For example, you can create the tables in a standardized way, for example, in a Snowflake using these contracts. So also we can just do a lot of data quality checks against these schemas. For example, if there is a field like, this is a bare minimum example, like if there is a field like age, we can do some kind of validations within the contracts, or we can just define that the age should be between 0 and 100. This is just a simple business validation. Still, we can just mention this business validation inside contracts and starts to trigger this uh, using different kind of logics.
Yeah, sounds cool and very obvious. I hesitate a little bit to call it a movement, right? But there are so many people discussing data contracts this year. It began last year as a hot topic. It's been around for ages, though, right? The data contract is not, as I see it, something new. It's the thinking around data contracts and the appliance at a deeper and more automated level that's new, right? Wouldn't you say, John?
Yep, like I have mentioned recently in LinkedIn, that it's not really new. It's just that we are using this in API world for a long time. We are just adopting those good practices to the data side. But one other good thing, what I want to emphasize here is that if you have a contract, then probably the developer in operational plane can just easily dump the data into analytical plane without any even need of a data engineer, which is going to be a game changer. That is exactly what we want from a mesh concept also, like the source taking the ownership of the source data. So if you have the contract-driven architecture where with the configurations, you can say that these are the configurations I want, this, and if we can automate this ingestion process, then a backend developer can do the basic ingestion that we need a data engineer for the last few years. That's where I see a huge potential of contract and mesh coming together.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and I mean that is the potential that we are looking into here. More at a specific level, what is your practical experience with data contracts so far, if you have any? And I mean, it's totally fair if you haven't. I mean, we're discussing a lot of ideas. We need to discuss ideas, right? We don't necessarily have a lot of practical experience to build on.
Theoretically, I'm the official reviewer of the book from Andrew Johns, the Data Quality with Data Contracts. And practically at Volvo Cars, we are implementing data contracts, although it's an early state. I wouldn't say it's an early state. It's quite mature when you look at the market. We have defined the contracts, we have fulfilled the contracts, and we are quite in some way. I would say that we at least on a POC level, we have implemented and we tried out the potential of contracts, but I would say that the potential of contract is quite wide. It could be used for data quality. It could be used for different purposes. Even transformation logics can be mentioned in contracts, or even data catalog can be really go and link with contracts. So it's up to the companies or the teams to decide like to what extent we want to use contracts and how, based upon the maturity of the company and data literacy, to be honest.
Yeah. Totally agree. Um, so do you think, in terms of data mesh, do you think, or to what extent is a data mesh envisionable without data contracting? Is it something that is it a prerequisite? What's your take on that?
It's like icing on the cake, I would say. Contract. I won't say that you can't do mesh without contracts. But yeah,
Okay.
on
Okay.
other hand, there is no real single way of contract or mesh implementation in the industry. We have 100 different approaches by 100 different people on
Yes.
a mesh, and it's a concept basically. Yes.
Yeah, so I like that way of phrasing it, like the icing on the cake, right? Because you can definitely get a mesh without thinking or taking into account data contracting. But I guess one of the reasons why you would want to have it would be scale, right? If you want to have a mesh that can really scale, you need everything, every possible component that you can get that automates the scaling of the mesh, right? And that is, I guess, where the contract comes into play, right?
Yeah. Also, that the importance of governance and quality inside mesh, and the industry is moving that keep the quality checks left as possible. So this is one way to making the governance or quality checks to the left, and that is the reason why I feel that contract is getting really great now.
Yeah, and I totally get what you mean by left, John. But for the listeners, would you expand a little bit about what you mean on left?
Yeah, left basically means like if you try to have all your data quality checks as early as possible in your pipeline. So the reason why we have that such a notion is that if you start to do data quality checks in data warehouse or towards the end of a pipeline, the amount of effort and money we want to get changed or to refactor is really high when you compare with what you have to do when you do these checks and find the bad quality data as early as possible in your data pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the big struggles in data management to do the right thing at the right point in time, right? And there's so many things we want to do left in the pipeline, meaning as close to the provider as possibly as possible, simply. But
Yeah,
it's difficult, right, to get your head around that. I mean, because it's always like the demand is pushed by the consumer, always, right?
yeah,
So the consumer is also willing to do a lot of stuff that the consumer shouldn't do, at least in the world of data, right? Which is a little opposite than if you are in a supermarket, I guess, where you're consuming groceries. You expect groceries to be packed and labeled. That's not really the case in data, unfortunately, right? But have you managed to push left on this in
yeah.
Volvo?
At least we are trying some kind of POCs, or we have some ideas. We are almost in the phase of trying out these things to like do some, or the idea is basically like instead of asking the source team to do the data quality checks, as a data team, we will give them some kind of set of services to just run on their side and do the testing or run these services and see that if the data is having enough quality, at least the bare minimum, then only you send. So if this service is or get passed, then you are okay to just send the data downwards. If not, no, go and check yourself. Like if there is it's always a problem. Like if you go and ask those, you do your checks, make sure that the quality will be good, it will never happen. So one way of handling that is like, as a central data team, they give some kind of API services to these kind of developers and backend developers, and ask them to do these kind of checks. That is the approach.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So I guess in that case, the contract plays the role of the documentation of those tests, that the quality is high enough and the usability is good enough. That would be documented in the contract, I guess, or is that correctly understood? Or?
More than documentation, I see that contracts as a triggering point to do all these kind of checks.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so it's actively performing the tests, the contract. Yeah, that is right. And that is what you have to get your head around with these data contract thinkings, right? That it's not something reactive where you document, we have done this. It's actually part of the process, right?
Exactly. So it's more powerful than we think, to be honest. And also one other thing I want to emphasize here, that how we use contracts. If you use contracts in an exhaustive manner, there is always a chance that the developers tends to not use it because it's kind of an overwork for them. So we have to really put our thoughts like where all we have to use contracts. Most probably like start with the loads or data that is having high priority in the company, and gradually starts to try to just evangelize it, because at this point we don't have much toolings in place. Also, everyone is experimenting at this point. So try to choose the loads that use contracts wisely. This is my piece of advice.
Yeah. Sounds reasonable. You touched upon data mesh already in our conversation. In general, what's your thoughts on data mesh these days, John?
Yeah, we have spoke a lot around this. Yeah, as a concept, I like it. Like decentralized architecture, self-service platform, federated governance, data as a product. All these things are really nice on paper, but when we started to implement, we have a lot of open questions which we don't know how to be solved and what's the right approach. For example, is mesh an analytical thing, or is operational data also come into picture? All modeling things. How do we do modeling in a distributed data? How do we make sure that we have an effective approach for cross domain data product modeling? How do we model a data product when we have multiple users with different requirements? How do we avoid duplicates in a data mesh approach? That is one of the biggest problem that we're going to face. This data mesh concept can have a lot of duplicates. Is it good or bad? It's a topic to discuss, because some people, I've seen like people think that storage is cheap, so we don't mind having a lot of duplicate data. But on the other side, if you speak with someone who worked in data modeling or data warehouse for a long time, they see it's really bad for a lot of reasons, like inconsistencies and a lot of other problems. Also, how do we place MDM in this mesh approach? MDM is completely against what the mesh is saying. Though I know that there are some approaches in the market how both can coexist, but it's not been tested. So it's like a lot of open questions in the air, and lack of mature tools.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's also probably the reason why I think like Gartner have predicted data mesh to be obsolete in the plateau of hype cycle.
Yeah, I think I changed my opinion on data mesh every single day, but it's a vision and it's definitely something that is relevant. And at the same time, there's so many blind spots in it. I think the entire data community at a global level recognizes that scalable, decentralized data management in some way, some shape or form is the future, right? But the way data mesh describes this future is something that I don't think everyone would agree in.
Yeah. So I think like Gardner again summarized it in a good way. They said like only a very matured organization in data space can really move to mesh in a smooth manner. And as per the latest data management survey, only 18%, 18% of organization is matured to move to data mesh. So the question is like, how about the rest? How can they get into this boat? It's still the question that we have to really find out. On the other side, I'm not 100% convinced, like you said, like I'm not 100% convinced on data fabric as well, which is more centralized. So probably I'm expecting that something in middle of these two, like I was just reading your newsletter just before this conversation, then you were giving an approach in different, in some other context, but still semi-decentralized or something like that, an approach. At least something like that, I feel like could be the future where it's not 100% centralized or it's not 100% decentralized. So that kind of approach might be the future. I don't know. I'm just trying to.
No, but I think you're right. I have read Peter Stringholt's book, Data Management at Scale. I was the reviewer on the second edition, and we have exchanged views a lot. I'm an Aurelia author like him, and so therefore we have had a lot of communication, and I really think his approach is more pragmatic towards scalable data architecture, data management. And it is something when you have been in an enterprise with many hundreds of applications and old technology, on-premise technology, also in factories, then the dream of a crisp, easy, flexible data mesh seems like I won't say a Fata Morgana, but at least a beautiful dream, right? So, and then I guess in Volvo that must be the case too. I mean, you must have a lot of legacy technology and a lot of new technology at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, how do you balance that? John? I mean, you have to rely on old technology. You have to get new technology inside your IT landscape, of course, to perform new stuff and to modernize. But how do you balance this I guess walk between legacy and new technology?
Yeah, it's a very tricky question, our $1,000,000 question, to be honest. It's not just Volvo, the whole world is, to be honest, struggling in that. Because if it's not the new technology, the new data architectures as well, these all have few, this gives a lot of good things. For example, the storage is getting cheaper with new technologies. We have powerful computations. We have very easy to use toolings. But with these, we tend to forget few of the basics in data space. For example, modeling.
Yeah.
So this is so we with these tools we can create things very easily, and but we don't really take the holistic picture. So that means like this is going to make a lot of data spams soon. So we have to be really careful when we try to use the new tools and technology. We shouldn't really forget about our basics. Also, I was just hearing about Joe Rees. He was speaking about data modeling is dead or that kind of a talk. And it was really surprising. One of his point, I really liked it. He claims like, yeah, Agile is one of the reasons why data modeling is not really getting enough traction nowadays. Yeah, to some extent I agree, because we are looking for very small iterations and we are looking for fast output. And at that time, we are just forgetting about the big picture. So these are just accelerating for problems that new tools are getting created. So we have to be really careful when we start working with new tools. Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree in that. I think Joe Rees is onto something, and I have more guests on the podcast talking about like the clash between data management in general and agile. It seems to fit very well into software production, but not very well into data management in general. And so if you are forced to deliver in an agile way in data management, then you face a lot of problems, a lot of different problems. I also think, I mean, and this is just me ranting, I think Joe Rice is onto something about data modeling that is also perhaps more a tendency in the US than in Europe. Because I think, to be honest, and to be a little cynical, I think Europeans did not move fast enough the last 10 years, 10, 15 years in terms of technology. So I don't think modeling in Europe is that much of a lost art compared to the US, where a lot of new tools provided automated flexibility in terms of data modeling to an extent where it was really lost as an art. It has also been lost in Europe, but not to the same extent. That is at least my experience. But it's unscientific, but it's still like I have met a lot of very good data modelers in my career, and I think that it's still something that is practiced quite a lot in Europe, simply because unfortunately in too many companies we weren't able to move fast enough these last 1 or 2 decades, and that is yeah, we have to up our game in Europe, and I think we are doing that these years, really. But
Yeah. Also, one fair point we have to think here again is like I said, like with modernization of tools and technology, we don't really need this kind of modeling if you are in a startup where there is no much complexity or much data. We can get these performance out of it. So that is also one reason why people think like data modeling is not needed. But that's not the case when you get into a very complex environment where you have large set of legacy, we have a lot of data, then data modeling have a very, very good place.
yeah. Couple of last questions here. This is the Data Democracy podcast, and so I wanted to ask you, John, to what extent do you think we will succeed with democratizing data in your context? I would be particularly curious to hear you out about data contracting. I mean, to what extent do you think data contracts will democratize data in companies? No, it's a big question.
I know. I heard your definition like data for anyone, anywhere, and anytime, but I would like to extend that anyone access data to anyone, anywhere, anytime,
Mm-hmm.
but they also have the right for the right quality of data.
Yeah,
So it's not.
yeah. That is a good point, actually. I will take that into consideration.
Yeah,
And so I
sure.
guess you see that delivered by a data contract.
Yeah, that is my aim. Like, well, the contracts should really able to get the right set of data to everyone at any
Yeah,
time.
yeah. That's beautiful. What do you think about the future of enterprise data management?
Yeah, so it's a very relevant question at this point because we have generative AIs, we have LLMs, so things are moving really fast in that side. But still, like I said, we have from 80s we started to work on data quality and data management. Still, we are struggling with quality of data. Now data is getting fragmented in different places, and we have distributed governance. We are yet to find how well we can make sure that we have quality data to do all these generative AI stuffs. If this base is not really good, then I doubt how much all these AI things is going to fly. So we have to really put effort to make sure that our data management is done in the right way
Yeah,
to fly.
Yeah, you're right. It's actually a very important point in time right now with the evolution of generative AI and all the offerings it has. I mean, it's after the initial hype, we all realized that okay, this is a capability sitting on top of the stack. it's not in the bottom of the stack. So we need to actually do what we have talked about doing the last 30 years. We need to improve our data quality, and if not, it won't work. At least not at an enterprise level, right?
Yeah.
On the open web, it's another story, right? But that is something that I think you're totally right in the fact that this could be a new deal breaker for companies. If they get data quality right, they will be competitive on an AI level that is incomparable with those that do not get it right. John, thank you for being on. It was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, same here. Nice talking with you.
Yeah, and do stay in touch, right?